This is the Jantan Collective. My name is Jason Desmond, and we're here to discuss issues that matter to you, to me, to all guys out there, because we want to be better men, we want to be better males, better dudes. So how do we do that? We learn. We learn from the best, we discuss, we sometimes argue. Basically, we just want to be an evolved version of ourselves. Now, joblessness, it's an issue now. COVID-19, it has, affected us globally. There are no jobs to have because companies are shutting down. People are getting retrenched. Some people are even being asked to work less so that they can be paid less. Can you survive? That's the issue here, because joblessness in this country is expected to go up to 6%. That's like 2.4 million people without a job. What's up with that? Let's talk about it. Today we have clinical psychologist Dr. Joel Loh. He is a clinical psychologist and director at the Mind Psychological Services and Training.
There you go.
Yes, and we also have Jon Cohen, an old friend of mine. We used to work together from BrioHR. You are the head of people and culture.
Correct.
We'll talk more about what that is. And also an old friend of mine who has been in the industry forever, TV host, radio presenter. Juanita Ramayah, how are you?
Good.
Awesome. So, joblessness, let's get into it. Now, I guess the big question is, we've seen all the numbers everywhere, right? What's that, like millions of people out of jobs? John, from an HR point of view, where can we find jobs?
If I knew the answer to that, I could make a lot of money. But there's things that people can very easily do themselves. But there's also the wider economy to think about. So obviously the government is playing a big role in providing stimuluses to increase cash flows into households and to companies.
I love when you say that. There's a little look in your eye where you're like, I don't know whether it's actually going to work.
Well, it's certainly going to provide a short-term solution to keep certain companies from going out of business, and keep people in jobs and keep people being able to provide for their family. But it's a short-term solution, right? You can't keep giving people handouts. You have to create a sustainable economy. So the government on their side is doing these kind of things, but for individuals, nothing really changes that much. There's always been X amount of jobs, X amount of job seekers, and it's a competition to get the job. The only thing that's changed now is that competition is harder because there's many more job seekers than there are jobs. So nothing's really changed. You're still using JobStreet, you're still using WUWT, you're still using the LinkedIn job boards and all the other job boards around. What's different is you have to put in much more work to get the job. And with so many people out of work, the key advice that I give people is that you have to see or imagine that your new job is getting a job.
Right.
So many people look at job hunting and they just think, I'll do my CV, I'll send it to a few places and that's that done. But actually you have to think of getting a job as a job. And you have to research, you have to educate yourself, you have to teach yourself all the new skills that are required to find a job. These days you have to have great LinkedIn profiles, great CVs, so you almost have to be a graphic designer to make your CV look good. You have to be a social media expert to get your LinkedIn profile out there and seen by people. So there's so many skills that you have to learn, and then you have to work 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Wait,
You can't work for half an hour a day and expect to get a job. You have to work 9 to 5, training yourself, researching, and actually doing the work. If you sit back and think the government is going to take care of me, this is going to happen, I hope I get a job, you're not going to get a job, because the people you're competing against are working their butts off to get a job.
Now, you mentioned LinkedIn. Is it, or you're going to have to use social media to get their profile up there and everything? And Juanita, you obviously agree.
Yeah.
But the thing is, for an old guy, and I'm in my 40s, imagine you're 50 years old, right? You're 5 years away from probably retiring. Now they're pushing to 65, right? They're going to go, what's LinkedIn? They probably don't even have that. The last time they actually applied for a job or went for an interview, they submitted some resume
ads or something.
on a piece of paper.
Right.
So how do the older guys?
Yeah, it's a really tough situation, but I disagree that they wouldn't know how to use LinkedIn. I think all social media, although intimidating from the outside, once you take one step towards it, everything else becomes easy. It's designed to be as user-friendly and as intuitive as possible. And once you realize, you just make the mental switch that your LinkedIn profile is just a CV. It's not something different, it's not something amazing, it's not something complicated. It's just a CV that you've put online. That's all it is. That's all members of the older generation have to understand. And in fact, it's not just the older generation that have an issue with this. Younger generation who use social media to take pictures of their lunch and post it on Instagram to use social media in this way. They've never used it for job hunting. So they're actually facing the same problems. And if you look at LinkedIn profiles of the younger generation, they make as many mistakes and errors as people in the older generation. So actually, it's not a problem that just affects the older generation. It also affects the younger generation. The great news is that if you Google very simple terms like how to make my LinkedIn profile look amazing, there's articles and articles and articles that take you step by step what to do and how to make it as appealing as possible.
Yeah, it's down to the writing. I really enjoyed reading about that and learning how to create an awesome
What do people
LinkedIn
actually
profile.
read? What's in like LinkedIn
Yeah,
or like?
it's your tagline. What's the first line that you're gonna write to draw I don't know, future
So
employers?
what's a good line? No, I dream of traveling the world, and then people, oh, that's good. You want to be a travel influencer,
Humble brag.
right?
But you've got to think of who your audience is. So if you imagine a recruiter typically recruiting for 10 roles, each roles, he might have to look at 2,000 LinkedIn profiles to find the one right candidate for each role. So 10 roles, 2,000 candidates for each role. That's a lot of people he has to.
Yeah,
look
you
at.
gotta bundle.
And quite often, you will only read the first few sentences. So you've got to make sure the first sentences of your summary are not just eye-catching, as in something bombastic, but something that explains what you do and what you want to do as well. But it also has to be keyword friendly. So you have to take time to make it exciting.
So if you're good at hashtags, this is gonna be great for you, is it?
So
Don't
typically, if
hashtag on your bio.
Hashtag desperate. Hashtag need a job. Hashtag will work for 2/3 what I used to earn.
No, you say hashtag I've got plenty of offers coming in.
Right.
Maybe you should give me one too. You don't want to seem desperate. But keywords. So typically, if I'm looking for a head of marketing, I will go into LinkedIn and type in all kinds of keywords like director, marketing, SEO, SEM. So when you're creating your LinkedIn profile, you've got to imagine what are the keywords that a recruiter would use if they were looking for someone like me. And you've got to make sure your profile contains all those keywords while still being a creatively written.
This is as important as your Tinder and Bumble profile. It is as.
So basically, you need to. Basically, it's like a huge pickup line, right? Imagine trying to get a girl. I mean, it's a pickup line, but you're trying to pick up a job, right? But now you're probably going to be hiring soon, right? I mean, you're doing producing and presenting, and you're going to need a team. Does LinkedIn? Are you going to go through LinkedIn or people?
Yeah.
But our industry is different, though, isn't it? I mean, it's word of mouth, who you know, kind of thing, right?
Our industry meaning like
The creatives.
Yeah. So because I think we've been doing this for a while, we kind of know people, or there's a way to link through each other. But to look for clients, I think LinkedIn is a great way to take advantage of meeting new people and growing the network. So that's what I've been using LinkedIn for.
Looking for, okay.
Yeah.
And what are they? Is it
like agencies,
okay.
But going to individuals in the agencies, like going straight for the CEO. So you can find out who these people are and just send them a message and say, okay, these are my solutions, or this is what I'm doing.
How's it been for the past few months then? I mean, like COVID hit.
Yeah.
Times are tough. Yeah. It's got to be tough for them as well. What are they? Is it like right for the taking, or is it slim pickings?
I feel it is slim pickings. It is, But I feel like right now we're planting seeds. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Prepping
So
for the day, right?
yeah, so even if it doesn't happen now, you're also leaving a door, like saying, maybe future opportunities, maybe we can work together sometime in the future. So you're also leaving space, I think, for something to happen later. Doesn't have to be now. But I think pushing out profiles as a freelancer, that's kind of important. And like I said, you have to, you learn graphic design, you have to know what works, keywords. There's a lot to research on and learn if you really want to.
I'm still trying to figure out a 50-year-old guy trying to figure out Photoshop. And then making.
You don't have to do Photoshop. There are apps for that, Like, why do you need Photoshop?
I don't know. I'm still stuck on Friendster, for crying out loud. That's me.
Friendster shut down, JD. What are you on? Give me some of that.
I'm like, the last time, like, I haven't had to submit a CV, like a proper CV, in so long. Because I'm really out of that loop. I make my own opportunities and stuff like that. And I don't know whether that's how things should be right now, but that's also not the complete picture. I mean, 80% will still need to have jobs that you submit CVs and you go through LinkedIn and whatnot. I kind of created my own market. And when we were with that tech company, right, that streaming tech company, that was the last time I actually submitted a CV. So it's interesting that you say people still go through LinkedIn though, right?
So people, I think CVs are becoming outdated. They're still necessary, but I rarely collect CVs and I rarely post jobs. I just search on LinkedIn. If you assume that you can copy paste your CV into LinkedIn, it takes 5 minutes to set up.
Yeah.
And then instead of you having to go out and apply for jobs, you've deposited your CV as a LinkedIn profile, and recruiters can find you.
Right.
So you're outsourcing the job hunt to the recruiter. So you don't have to go and you should still go and apply for jobs.
Yeah.
But you've also got this extra avenue of recruiters being able to find you even though you're not applying for jobs.
I actually have I don't know that there's a function where you say open to new opportunities, and I forgot to turn that off because I'm working right now, right? I have a like full-time job, and then one of my bosses came over to me and said, "Why are you still looking for other opportunities?" I'm like, "When are you looking for other?" I'm like, "What are you looking at?" CVs, LinkedIn, older guys. Juanita and we're in the media broadcast industry and everything, but a lot of other people have they want to try to get their foot in the door and everything. They call people up. Do they still do that? Hey, can you help introduce me to someone? Like
I think it's very old-fashioned to actually call people for networking these days when it comes to job hunting. The same as sending a physical CV. I think in the last 10 years it's happened once, and you receive a CV in the post and you think, wow.
Yeah.
So novel.
What? Yeah. So
it's not a bill.
Yeah. But LinkedIn opens up so many doors, and you were talking about networking earlier, and LinkedIn is basically networking for dummies. The old way of networking before social media, you have to go to events, you have to dress up, you have to introduce yourself to people, you have to talk to people. For introverts or for people who are not comfortable in that kind of environment, networking is really...
You're not an introvert, yeah.
is really tough. But with LinkedIn, it gives you access to a global network of, I don't know how many LinkedIn users there are, more than 100 million. In Malaysia, I think it's 4 million LinkedIn users. It gives you instant access to these people, and you can start adding them, you can start taking part in conversations. There's no pressure, there's no reason not to do it. And you start to slowly build up a very effective job-seeking network. So even if you said, for example, in your industry, it's a closed circle and you kind of know everybody, but actually there's always going to be people outside your network. And LinkedIn helps you find people outside.
Yeah, but it comes out of the same problem, doesn't it? I mean, you say you get thousands and thousands of inquiries, but LinkedIn, everybody's profile looks exactly the same, except you're trying to have that pickup line in a way that you mentioned. How do you stand out from the crowd if everything is pretty much just standardized?
Yep, so everything is standardized, but there's a lot of flexibility within that. And also knowing who to connect with. If you send a connection request to someone who has no relevance to your past career, they're probably not going to want to connect with you or accept your connection request. You have got to be sensible about what you're doing, and you have got to understand that the people that you're trying to connect with, whether they're recruiters or hiring managers or just people you want help from, they've got a day job, they've got a family. You're the least important part of their day, and a lot of people get really frustrated. They say, I'm sending lots of CVs, I'm applying for lots of jobs, I'm connecting with a lot of people, but I'm not getting any responses. So one of the first things you have to do, whether you're networking or looking for a job, is just realize that the success rate is very, very low, and become comfortable with that, and know that you have to actually talk to a lot of people before you get any success, and not get frustrated about the rejections, because actually you're not being rejected. You're just a very small priority in someone else's life.
I love that. I think like even in therapy as well, right? We talk to clients and we have a lot of people who aspire to become like entrepreneurs and businessmen, the next Steve Jobs and all that. And we remind our clients, right, that social media only amplifies that 1% of people who succeed. No one's going to tell you about how many times I failed, how many times I didn't get a job or whatever it is, right? And they look at the success stories and say, oh, that's my story, I have to have it, right? So I think I love that. It's like managing your own expectations, right? This is the reality of the situation. You only have 10 jobs, not 100 people are not going to get it right.
Right.
So I think that's actually brilliant.
Instagram is our highlight reel.
Yeah,
We're not going to put our failures up
Boasting,
there.
yeah.
So.
Actually, talking about it, this has happened to me before, and it's very strange because I actually got a job interview, went in, and they said, yeah, so we're very interested in hiring you, but we went through your social media page. I'm like, oh my God, like what the, serious. Do you really go, like, is that important? Even that's my personal page.
So a recruiter is essentially a stalker. A stalker.
It's fun, right?
And it is fun as well. So recruitment is also quite boring. So sometimes as a recruiter, you do want to search around and add a bit more fun to your job. But in reality, a lot of companies now are hiring specifically for culture fit.
Okay.
And it's very hard to assess culture fit on a CV or a LinkedIn profile. In fact, it's also very hard just using other social media as well. But it does give you a little insight. Again, if you've got 10 candidates and you want to shortlist 4 for an interview, and all the CVs look the same and all the LinkedIn profiles look the same,
How do you stand out?
You don't want to have to call all 10 of them and do a phone screening. You only want to call 4 or 5 of them. So then you go to the next available information, which is their social media. And you make a decision that way. If you had plenty of time, you can call all 10 or all 20 and get a really in-depth idea of what they're about and things like this. But you just don't have that time, so a quick flick onto their Facebook or their Instagram tells you a little bit more, not a lot, but just enough to help you narrow a big number of candidates down to a small number of candidates.
Mm-hmm. I feel like everybody is essentially a personality in that sense, where you have to have, I don't know, your content on every platform. Does it higher my chances if I have articles, for example, on LinkedIn to get noticed? Let's say I produce I write a lot of articles.
So if you are in a industry where you're producing content,
yeah.
of course.
Or if you apply for a PR job.
Exactly. So if I can have evidence of your skills and abilities before even meeting you, as in I can read your content, read your press releases, etc. Again, that gives me another reason to call you versus someone who has an identical CV, right, but with no content online that I provide.
Right. What if I've spoken on it? Sorry.
So it definitely helps.
Okay. What if I've spoken on a TEDx talk?
I think that helps as well. I think so. TEDx specifically, there's a lot of prestige around it.
Yeah.
So if you see someone who has done a TED talk, you automatically assume that they must be good.
Legit.
They must be good.
Yeah.
But even non-content related jobs, if I'm hiring a data analyst and I see that they've written an article about a new function within data analytics, it makes me think, wow, this person's up to date. They're passionate about the industry, and maybe I should give them a call.
So within a profile, it's like stand out. Obviously, you're qualified for the job. You write a lot of articles that's relevant to whatever job.
Advice. Put out your advice.
Right,
Yeah.
and like what else? You go for conferences.
But the articles themselves can also be a way for recruiters to find you.
Yes.
So if you're on LinkedIn constantly, you constantly see all these updates of new articles and new posts, and you might see this data analyst has written an article, and then you're not hiring, but then 5 months later you kind of go, oh, I remember seeing that guy wrote an article. Mm-hmm. Let me try and remember who that guy was. So even if you're not specifically using it to find a job, becoming or taking efforts to become well known within your specialization is always going to help you find jobs in the future. So I definitely recommend people write articles, do interesting posts about what they do. They often take less than 10 minutes a day.
When you go into an interview, let's say you got it, and you're at the interview, and there's a sea of people there going for the same job. That's a whole other hurdle, right? You know, so if let's just say, I'm a pretty young thing, right?
You are.
I know, right? So Juanita's there with me going for the same job, right? What will make us stand out? Because we already stand out among a crowd of people, right? Let's just say. And there's only one person, you're only going to hire one. What would that be?
So my generic advice to
Back down to
there's lots of unconscious bias, there's lots of things that you could play up to, but maybe morally you shouldn't.
But in this climate, I'm talking
in this climate, the most important thing is preparation. So you have to know the company inside out. You should stalk the recruiters online and the hiring manager online if you know who the hiring manager is. And you should anticipate all the questions that they're going to ask. So you should be researching, Googling interview questions, and then thinking, what is a good response to this question?
Right.
And imagining if you were hiring for that position, what questions would you ask? And therefore, how would I answer that question?
It's a big poker game, though.
Poker is maybe not the right analogy, but definitely it's a bit.
Yeah, no, because poker you bluff, right? So maybe
But
not.
you're not bluffing, right?
You're
not lying. You're using the experience that you have to make yourself sound as good as possible, but doing it before the interview.
But what's your take on over-preparing, though? Because I can also imagine a situation where someone prepares to the line level, right? And by the time they hit the interview, they just completely break down and freak out. Because we have situations like this as well, right?
It's happening, yeah.
Attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that one, as a candidate, you're probably in a better position to answer that question than myself.
Right.
As a employer, as an interviewer, you need to know how to handle candidates who are frightened. You know, there's people who are bad candidates, but they're good interviewers, and there's people who are perfect for the job, but they're bad at interviews. And you need to find a way to make people relax and specifically get the information that you need from them. Because you're right, some people do close down.
Yeah.
Their job isn't client facing. Their job doesn't need them to be an extrovert.
Data analytics or something.
But an interview requires you to be an extrovert.
Right.
So often it's very easy to hire the wrong person because the right person screwed up the interview. So you need to know as an interviewer how to see past that and how to draw out the right information. Sometimes it means sitting that person down and actually getting them to relax. And I've done it myself. You really need to. I've had people cry in interviews, not because.
Can we not talk about my interview again? My God, that was a horrible experience. You know? John made me cry.
But it's a hugely intimidating situation,
Right.
And some people can't handle it. But their job also doesn't require them to handle that kind of situation. So as an interviewer, you need to learn how to calm people down and how to get people comfortable, or they can still be in that agitated state, but you need to know how to get the information you want from them.
But if you keep going on and not trying to get him to be comfortable and he does it, obviously he's the wrong fit, right? So no matter how much I go in and say, like back in the day, we'd say, what's your biggest fault? Oh, I work too hard.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so overdone. But I have a question. How have you handled the situation now? Because I'm sure you're doing interviews through Zoom.
Mostly through Zoom.
So how is it different?
How do you
now
read people
with-
through Zoom?
Yeah.
So it does make things a little bit harder, but essentially it's the same thing. You're missing out on certain information, which is body language, and to some extent facial expressions. Even when you're on a video call, it's laggy, and you can't pick up certain things that you would do face to face. So it makes it a little bit harder, and it also, you do need to put in a lot more work in calming candidates down. Because if you think face-to-face interviews are intimidating, actually video interviewing is a far more intimidating situation. Even myself, over the last 10 years, even pre-COVID, I do hundreds of video interviews with people in different countries, and I hate it. I every time before the interview, I think, I really don't want to do this. I hate the format, and And I find it slightly...
But it's the same with video conferencing as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like in big groups.
But as an interviewer, you have to build past that, and you have to make the candidate feel comfortable so that you can get the information that you want. There's various things that you can have as a list of tasks, like making sure you are the first person on the call so that the person doesn't have to wait, making sure you chit chat for 5 minutes before the session so that they're ready, sending them a task list of things that they need to do, make sure your internet connection is good, make sure your device is charged, make sure you're comfortable with how you look on the camera before you start. So many times I interview people over a video call, and the first 5 minutes they're jiggling around, they're moving, and you already make the decision that I don't like this person.
Right, yeah.
So even if they're good, you've already got this bias in your head that this person has irritated me.
And as a candidate, if let's say I am going for an interview, is it annoying for me to ask you these questions, ask you for maybe a rundown, I don't know?
For me, no.
I'd be impressed actually.
So
forward thinking. Yeah.
So
But you mean you ask lots of questions about the company?
How can I
Or
prepare
like about the
for
job, how
the
can I
interview?
prepare, is this,
Right.
because I ask a lot of questions and I'm worried it comes off.
a lot of people get into HR and recruitment because they really enjoy the study of people behavior, and they really enjoy. They've got a genuine empathy. They care about people, and when people ask them for help, they love it. Even if they can't help, just the fact that someone sees them as someone who could help them, it's really good for your ego, and you really feel good that this person has felt that you are the person that can help.
That's actually a good social psychology trick, right? The instant you ask someone a question and they're able to help you, automatically you set this motion in their mind that, okay, I like you a bit more because I was able to help you out. So actually, in the long run, that could actually play to your benefit as well, right? Because you get them to like you more.
Definitely. But the problem is, you also get people in HR and recruitment who wound up there by accident.
Right.
They're not passionate about the job.
How do you wind up in HR by accident?
It happens. In all other types of
Yeah,
careers.
you told me to go to the left door, I went to the right door, and poof, I'm in HR.
You
Jeez.
just end up not liking people anymore at some point.
And some recruiters just care about KPIs. They have to interview X amount of people per week. They have to offer X amount of people a week. So when they have someone which is causing them extra work, like asking them lots of questions, sending them emails that need a reply, they just think, I can't be bothered.
Now, on that, you're doing so much to try and get the best out of this potential candidate for a job, and then you said like sometimes they're all about KPIs. I can't be bothered. I got to fill out all these roles and whatnot. These guys just don't fit the bill and whatnot. Now, in this current climate, thousands of people have lost their jobs. They're going for all these job fairs, and I always go to all these job fairs, and I'm constantly fascinated by how many people actually do get hired at these job fairs. You don't have time to psycho these people and try to figure out, oh, this person is a good fit, I'm going to calm them down, let them drink water. So I'm pretty sure that there's a high rejection rate, right? How are these people doing this? I mean, you've gone through, how are people dealing with rejection?
Yep.
Job after job after job. At some point, you have to crack, right? When you go, I can't do this anymore. Maybe I'm just not right for semiconductor engineering or whatever it is,
But I really like what John said just now, right? I think the fact that you said a lot of good things just then, and I think one thing that I really latched on was the fact that you getting people to change perspectives on how about this whole process about getting a job is brilliant. Like you just said this then, your job isn't to get a job. Your job is getting a job. That's your full-time profession, right? And I thought that's absolutely brilliant. And when that becomes the narrative in your head, I think that helps a lot with the rejection part, because it's not, my success isn't determined by how many callbacks I get, how many interviews I get. It's about the fact that I've done this many submissions, I've done this many interviews, for example, and that's my KPI, right? And you being rejected is just part and parcel of that new job that you have in that sense. So I actually really love that, right? And I think a lot of times it's really about perspectives. Like, me failing at a job means, okay, it's a bad fit for some people. Other people, it's the end of the world, right? It's like my dream job. I wanted to work in Google or Accenture or whatever it is, right? And I don't get it, that's it, my world crumbles. And I think there's also a lot to do with their personality as well. Some people are just naturally a bit more resilient, a bit more robust. So no matter how many rejections you get, it's still okay. It's all right for me to just bounce back. Some people, they can't, right? It's just like the end of the world, that kind of thing. So that's why I really enjoyed that, right? If you're able to change that perspective, change the narrative in your head, suddenly it's not that bad anymore. It's just part and parcel. It's just an everyday kind of thing. That sounds right.
Finding rewards is important as well. So the ultimate reward of job hunting is finding a job, but that might take 3 months, it might take 6 months, it might take 1,000 applications.
Right.
So you have to find a way to say, okay, my target this week is to apply for 100 relevant jobs, and if I do that, I'm gonna give myself this special meal
nice.
or something else, and create these artificial rewards.
Milestones.
So your goal is not getting a job; it's the actions and the tasks rather than getting a job, and that can keep you motivated when actually you do have to search for so long. And it's funny if you compare it to a sales job. My first job was selling makeup door to door.
Wait, what?
Wow.
Sorry, let's explore this.
Just very casually.
Knocking on people's door, and then trying to sell them makeup. So on their home.
Look at you! I knew you were into makeup.
It's a bit strange, but it was a KPI job. So you would try and knock on 500 doors a day, and from that you would roughly work out how many doors you have to knock on to get a sale.
How do you sell makeup?
It's very hard. It's very difficult. But the key thing is to imagine, like once you've done it for a week, you know roughly how many doors you need to knock on for one sale. So if for 500 doors, you know you get 10 sales. So you know you need to knock on 50 doors to get one sale. So then every single door you knock on becomes being one step closer to getting the successful one. Whereas if you look at it as thinking, I just need to make sales, every door is a rejection, and everyone hurts. Whereas if you just think of the door as one step closer to getting that.
So you're focusing on the positive side. Is there an everyday practice that I can do with smaller things or smaller tasks to get into that mindset or habit of focusing on the positive instead of the negative?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of times, the negatives or the failures that we have, it's just so much more accentuated, right? Because it's just it's so devastating. It's unusual as well, because like on Facebook and Instagram, you only see the positive things, right? So when suddenly there's something bad happens, it's like, oh my God, why? It's so unique, right? And it really stays in your mind. So I think honestly that whole idea about just taking 5 minutes a day and just reflecting on what you were able to do today, it's actually a really good way to just get the positivity up. So for example, I was able to drive here for this today. I have a car, I can drive, right? I was able to pay with my Touch and Go. I've got like credit left over, and that's really good affirmation to have as well. But it's because it's so tiny, we just don't give it enough credit that we should, I think. So I think that's something that's really simple you can do on a daily basis, just to be grateful, I think. Yeah.
Does it change? I mean, with different people from different age groups. Are people more positive generally if they're in their 20s compared to their 30s who have families and they're worried about having to pay the bills and they have to pay for the kids' education and they have the wife to and their in-laws and say, how come you lost a job? It's stuff like that. There's a lot on the line here.
And also like the divorce rates as well going up, and
exactly.
it happens between that age group as well. Yeah.
So does it change from group to group?
It does. Actually, biologically speaking, right? So we're talking about younger. I'm going to go back a bit further. So people in their teenage years, so about 16 to about 20, 23, 24, right? Their brains are still developing, right? So that's why in that age population, you see a lot more risk takers, a lot of like jackassery kind of thing, like that kind of stuff that they do, right? And because naturally their brains are developing to a point, they're trying to get to a point where they're able to make more rational, more concerted efforts to be calm and do the right thing, so to speak. At that age, that's why there's so many more risk takers. That's why drinking is so much more prevalent at that age group, for example, and all that kind of things, right? So if you put an 18 to 19-year-old in this situation right now, they're like, it's another day, it's Friday, right? I just go and do whatever I need to do. Compare it to a 30-year-old, 40-year-old who's got a family, who's got obligations and responsibilities, then obviously that ramps up. So not only is it a social kind of pressure that you put on yourself, but biologically as well, it does have a difference.
Because I keep thinking about, what's that Will Smith movie where he kept trying to get a job and he Pursuit of Happiness, which is the worst title for a movie ever, because there's no happiness in that movie at all until the very end, right?
Could not watch the show, man. I watched it once, I never watched it again.
At the point where you think it can't get any worse, it does get worse, right? And it's sort of like that right now, because I love the fact that you give yourself a time frame and go at it and be mentally prepared. It's like sales. Not everybody's ready for sales because they already lost a job. It's a psychological hit. What I've worked for, and I'm like, telling everybody, hey, look, I got a job as a flight attendant or whatever it is, and I lose a job. Now, you're supposed to go out there, get another job, and it's not happening. First month, second month, third month.
Right.
You still need to eat.
Yeah.
Most of these people have no savings. How do you mentally prepare for that? What do they do?
It's funny when you go into sales roles, very hardcore sales roles. You're specifically told to watch Pursuit of Happiness, The Boiler Room, Wolf of Wall Street. All these films about people starting from nothing and working their butts off and eventually succeeding.
At some point, you are going to spend the night in the toilet. Right? That's the only part of the movie I remember.
Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, exactly, Jeez.
But it is about motivation and it is about perspective. And if you focus on the end goal of getting a job, you're going to be disappointed with every rejection along the way. Whereas if you focus on each individual task one at a time with rewards along the way, it helps keep you focused, it helps keep you motivated. It doesn't necessarily help with the problem you said about not being able to feed your family.
Yeah.
But it gives you a direction.
But it's a real problem, though.
It is.
It is a real problem,
Right.
yeah. And that's where the government stimulus is that help feed more cash flow into households
That's like what,
is helping.
Yeah.
600 ringgit, was it? For the
I think it's
incomes
600.
less
Yeah,
than,
what is
less
600
than 4,000. Yeah.
To be fair though, I mean, if you're looking at the B40s, for example, 600, it's tons, right? I mean, it's enough for you to buy rice, oil and salt, in essentials, right? And then, like what John is saying, we're not talking about McDonald's or Starbucks here. We're talking about literally feeding the kids and make sure they don't go to bed hungry, right? So it's not a lot in the grander scheme of things, but it's better than nothing. And that $600 also means that I can spend another week looking for a job versus struggling and doing X, Y, Z.
And it's not just the government stimuluses; it's the pauses on mortgage payments and landlords.
They think of pushing that for another 6 months, I think, the moratorium, right?
And especially landlords taking their own initiatives, not related to the government, but saying, okay, no need to pay rent for a few months. When you combine those two things, 600 ringgit a month actually does.
And also on the mental health, I feel it takes a lot of burden off, knowing like there's some that's coming in. Yeah, I feel so.
Yeah, I think that you're right, absolutely right. I think, like I said, sometimes it's not so much the actual monetary value of it. Or, I mean, for some people it definitely is, but just the fact that, okay, I've got help. People are looking out for me, they're thinking about us, there is help to be had. And I think that can be very beneficial, right? Just so that if I can take away this portion of my fear and concerns, I will like that much more brain space to just focus on fixing my CV, for example, going on LinkedIn and trying to figure out where to get jobs, right? I think it's a great big help.
So you're talking about in the meantime, okay, all this kind of stuff, right? Should they just get some job in the meantime before they actually get the dream job again,
That's a really tough question when people ask it.
Like flip burgers or something?
Because it is easy when you need a job, just take any job. But then once you've got any job, it's very easy to get trapped in that comfort zone and trapped in that job that you don't want. Even once the economy recovers, you're there, you've got money coming in, and you get trapped in a comfort zone. And it's happened to me before I found recruitment, where I just end up doing these dead-end jobs because it pays the money. Yeah, it pays the rent. And my ambitions weren't high enough to force me out of that job. And it's something that I really regret. So taking a job that you need, you have to make sure you really need it. And you have to make sure...
Yeah, but if you're going to feed yourself and your family, you need it.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So if you're a fresh graduate living with your parents, and they're financially able to support you, I would say hold out for the perfect job. If you are supporting the family, you need to do.
On that though, do you have any of your peers around your same age now? Because you're young enough to have friends who can go back to their families.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did any of them actually do that?
I'm not sure if some went back to their families,
They're
but
struggling
I know
through, is
some got help from their families, but they stayed alone. Some stayed alone, some went back to their families to be with their parents because their parents are a little bit older.
Right.
And it's just easier to everyone, Asian parents come home, be at home, it's safe also. So in that sense, I think we're very lucky because we don't have like high overhead, we don't have kids to feed because, oh my God, I can't imagine like having kids to feed and, a family. So in that respect, we're very, very lucky. We can't complain, honestly.
It's all nice to think about we're gonna figure this out in the long run, here, there, everywhere, and get some money here from the government. Psychologically, it helps us and whatnot. But there are far-reaching problems when you think about it. Like someone who's actually, let's say engineering. I studied engineering. I want to be an engineer. I can't get a job as an engineer because there are no jobs that are available. The company's not hiring in a factory or whatever it is, like the hard drive factory or whatever it is. Do people still make hard drives? I don't even know. Right?
SSDs.
I don't know. Right? So they take some other job. And then they get comfortable in it, as you said. And then they do it. And then they get really good at being a makeup salesperson. Right? Let's just say. But then at some point, you're going to need, when economy recover and whatnot, you're going to need a ton of people to take up these jobs for manufacturing production in a hard drive factory or whatever. These people could have taken up those jobs, but they're not going to want to take these jobs anymore because they're flipping burgers or something over there and they're very happy. Now, what are the far-reaching effects of this, I suppose? That's the big question here.
So you're talking about the COVID-19 situation.
Yeah. And let's say these guys actually want to take these jobs. They don't even have the experience for it because they went off and did something else.
So you're talking about COVID-19 creating a situation where future industries which need to grow do not have the talent that they need to be able to grow. So that's happening now, and it's happening before the COVID-19 situation. There's always a lack of specifically tech engineers. Tech companies have to fight teeth and claw to get the best engineers, and there's never enough. So that's always been happening. It's important for the government to recognize what areas do need talent, and then how to incentivize students to study certain subjects and to move into certain areas, but also for companies themselves to set up training schemes to build their long-term kind of candidate base.
But are companies that forward-looking though? Like, I mean, I would assume that for a lot of companies right now, they're just looking at the my monthly income statements or whatever it is, and say, okay, we need to survive. We need to survive.
Exactly. That's one of the big problems. I think the first things that companies stop doing in this kind of situation
I can imagine,
is these extra costs. And it might not be development, it might be other areas. Suddenly all the free lunches disappear, things like this. But also, developing that future talent pool, which in the past has been a priority because it gives them a competitive advantage, now is just a cost that they can't afford. So you probably will see a decline, but the economy will bounce back. One thing that the previous recessions have shown is that things bounce back in a certain pattern, and one thing that happens is that automation always accelerates immediately after these kind of recessions. So certain areas will always accelerate during and after a recession, and so there should be a lot of study by governments and by companies about what skills they do need and how we can encourage and develop education and development in those areas.
And I think for us like freelancers, it was very important, I feel, for me to acquire new skills, to learn new things. And now you can get everything online, all your badges that you can have on LinkedIn, you know? So I think that's an investment as well that freelancers or younger people in their 20s, if you have extra cash.
Are they all as free or as forward-thinking as you, though?
Well, that's why you're doing this show, so people will watch and
I always hope that they do, because it's not like I constantly read and I'm constantly out there in the market, and I cannot sit still. So I always want to do different things. Yeah. Now, that's also slightly, you mentioned freelancing, right? Like that's the ultimate push for the gig economy in a way, isn't it? Right? Like let's just say you never got a job on a radio station or a TV station and whatnot, and you kept trying and it didn't work out, and then COVID hits, right? I'm sure there are a lot of mass comm students who want to be superstars and whatever, and there's just nothing available. What do you do? I mean, you became an entrepreneur. You're doing all this podcast production and stuff. Is this the right time for them to get into the gig economy?
Yeah, like send me a message and like, I don't know, like give me your idea.
I mean, should they even start their own company though?
I feel like, starting a company is only how much if you go and like apply for, an SSM, I don't know, enterprise or whatever, that you can start a company already. But I think it is possible. I think it's actually quite necessary to try and work when you're studying, like when you're going to college and stuff. Like, I think it's important to get a degree. I know a lot of people are saying like you don't need to go to college, you don't need to go and get a
Don't
degree.
listen to
Just
don't watch
work.
Gary Vee so much.
I don't believe that. I really don't. I think you need a degree and you need to like keep, have to grow and one up yourself. But I think it's also possible to work and study.
Now, do you think that's a good idea to try to split your thought process on
I
that?
think it's fine. I think like you said, I think we have some conversations just then about saying how a lot of times people assume that once you get a paper degree or qualification, that's it, you're set for life. I think this is the kind of story or the narrative that our parents, our grandparents used to tell us, right? Oh, go to university, get a degree, you'll be fine, you'll be set. I think that was true maybe 20, 30 years ago, maybe, I don't know. But nowadays, it's not really, right? Like even for me, when I hire clinicians for our team, right? Your paper qualifications do enough to get you an interview because I say, okay, you're qualified to do the work that you're doing. But after that, I don't care whether you're the top student or the worst student, right? It's really about how you present yourself, the experiences that you've had and all that. And I think if you can manage working and studying at the same time, that gives you a good advantage. But only if you can. I mean, if you can't, don't shoot yourself in the foot and then thank your degree for getting in trouble.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think slightly before that, the one I wanted to jump in on was how if you can start your own thing, do your own thing right now. And I think there's a lot of positivity in that. I think because, like you said, you hustle, right? You don't have a job, great. I'm going to hustle, I'm going to do my work, and I'm going to get whatever I need to be done. But at the same time, I think when you become too consumed by that, you got to be very careful about that, right? So like one of the client populations that I see quite a bit is actually entrepreneurs, right? Because they are so enamored by the idea of succeeding, they forget that out of 100 entrepreneurs, 99, 98 fail. One maybe semi-succeeds and one actually succeeds, right? And they forget that message, right? They forget that idea, and they think that if I fail, I'm a loser. I'm hopeless, right? But in actual fact, you're just normal. You're just part of everyone else, right? So I think it's a great idea to hustle in that sense, like to do your own thing, make your own thing, which is great. But you also need to temper it with the fact that you might fail, and there's a very good chance you might fail. And what do you do after that, right? And if not, if your brainchild is, oh, I've got this brilliant idea, I'm going to sell it, and then that's it, I'm going to be a millionaire, and it tanks, and that's your entire reality crushed to bits, right? Then what, right? And so I think we need to find that balance a little bit. Yes, go do your own thing, but always have that safety net in the sense that knowing that if I do fail, there are things I fall back on, which like a degree, for example, work experience or whatever you learn in that sense, right?
And you were talking about working or studying and working at the same time. But even if you look at it from a point of view of job searching and trying to do an entrepreneurial pursuit at the same time, there's almost a no-lose situation. If you succeed, if the entrepreneurial pursuit succeeds, fantastic. If it doesn't, when an interviewer asks you what have you been doing for the last 6 months, you've got something fantastic to tell them. And I strongly believe in that you make your own luck and create your own opportunities. If you're doing all the entrepreneurial pursuits, you're going to be talking to so many people, you're going to be naturally networking and increasing your circle. There's a good chance your next job might come from someone you met during the time doing these things. So there's almost like a no-lose situation. Maybe it won't succeed as a business, but it could be the way that you get the next job versus sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself watching Netflix.
And you learn so much too in that time.
Of course, yeah.
But isn't it just maybe, because I keep thinking, because we talk about entrepreneurship and doing your own thing and freelancing and gigging, is this very much like, what's that hashtag first world problems kind of thing? Like it's a very urban thing. I don't see issues in cities. Is this problem out there? And if it's the problems are in the rural area, is it a B40 thing? If it's B40s or the lower end of M40, do they not have the mindset to get into what they're calling Industry 4.0, or they're calling it the gig economy? How do you get them ready for this new norm, this new world? You know,
it is tough, and I think the internet rules everything now, right? And if you are so rural that you don't have access to the internet, I'm not sure what the answer to that question is.
Yeah.
But actually, I think internet connectivity in Malaysia is extended now to even the most rural areas, and you see so
well,
many.
it's not that girl had to climb a tree just.
Oh, they're building a tower for her now.
Yeah, really.
Okay,
She had to take her exams and then she had to climb a tree. But anyway, yeah.
But you see so many positive stories now about Lazada and Shopee bringing huge customer bases to these tiny rural businesses.
Yeah.
And I think one positive that a lot of people agree on about COVID-19 is how it's changed people's minds about working remotely. So now the gig economy has suffered because in the short term, because they're easily disposable, as in the company has employees who are contracted to work there. They have freelancers, and it's easy to get rid of the freelancers and cut that cost. It's not easy to get rid of the employees. That's a knee-jerk reaction. And going forward, companies now know most of their, or certain industries know that most of their employees can actually work remotely and not lose performance. So the next step from there is, do they even need to be employees?
Yeah.
Can we do everything with freelancers and kind of run that gig-based economy? And then, does it matter if they're in KL? Does it matter if they're in a rural area? As long as they've got a strong internet connection, that's all you need, right?
That's a whole other discussion that we should have about
whether or not they have an
connectivity.
internet connection is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming you do, I think COVID-19 has been very good for the gig economy, even though in the short term, a lot of people have lost a lot of their stable business.
I agree with you. I think it's very exciting, actually, watching and seeing how people have been, doing this. How now everyone's going for live streams. I think that's like the go-to thing. So you'll see like a flood of live streams, but then now you have to think about what's next. Like after people are bored of, these live streams, what's next? Experiential stuff.
Actually, you know what? That's great that you mentioned it, because I think she's in Sungai Siput, in a small town in Ipoh, whatever it is. This girl, because I think COVID-19 forced her to stay at home and everything, so she started doing all these cooking videos and whatnot, and then she became this superstar, and then she started getting like the Prime Minister sent her like all these cameras.
The couple, right?
Parvita or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, I should have started cooking on camera, man.
But you got to be Indian. Nah.
Oh, yeah. I'm half, man. I'm half, So that kind of worked out for me. So what is Industry 4.0? I keep hearing about this. What is it really, and what do people need to be prepared for to get into that market? I mean, workers,
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and I think you'll get 10 different answers if you ask 10 different people.
Really?
But essentially, it's the move towards digitalization and automation.
Doesn't it mean less jobs then? If jobs are automated.
Of course, so it means different jobs. Exactly.
Can we automate your job? There's no way you can automate your job.
Honestly, though, it's not been done. It has been, right? So, like, I think there was a study in I think Harvard or Stanford, one of those big old school universities, right, where they actually tried to digitize the brain of a therapist, right? So, like, for example, I do CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, and the wonderful thing about CBT is that it's very manualized. So, like, week 1 you do XYZ, week 2 you do ABC, and so on and so forth. So their idea was that if I compress that all into a computer, right, so based on the inputs that I get from the clients, will that work? Because it's basically repeating what I say anyway, right? And the study shows that it's about half. So it's like half the time it works, half the time it doesn't. So it's almost like it's chance, it's luck in a sense, right? Nowadays, there are a lot of efforts to try and digitize the work that we do, in the sense that online platforms, online therapy, chatbots, chat apps, and things like that, right? And as a company, we've done a bit of that as well. Like, people have approached us to try and be on their platforms and things like that, right? And honestly, what we find is that, for every 10 clients that we say, hey, we're on this app right now, do you want to come and join in and do therapy through the app, right? 7 say no, right? 3 will say yes because, okay, good, great, I'm traveling from, I don't know, Kajang or something like that, it's really far to get here. The other 7 say, what, if I can see you face to face, I think I still want to come. So I don't know whether it's a unique to my profession kind of thing, where there's just some energy about being in the same room, in the same space, and sharing the same air as the person, that it's curative in that sense. I don't know if it's that. I would love to find out, right? But a lot of people actually gravitate more towards face-to-face. So, like, even during this COVID-19, and when we're telling clients, oh, you know what, you can come and see us online, and we got Zoom and Skype and whatnot, right? Half of them said, you know what, I'll wait till the COVID-19's over, right? I'd rather wait than do it something over a platform that I'm not comfortable with, and I don't want to do it in, and all that, right?
Are clients in the same age group that
Yeah, so across the board. So we've got like, you think the younger ones would say, oh yeah, let's do a Zoom call, that's fine, right? But no, we've got like 20, 30 year olds who say, you know what, I want to come in. And we have like the older generations, the 50, 60 year olds who say, oh, it's great, I don't have to travel, I can spend more time with my grandkids, I'll give you a call. And it's so weird, right?
I think they've done similar things with lawyers, creating lawyer bots that have a higher success rate of getting clients out of traffic offences than real lawyers. But what's interesting about COVID-19 is that it's breaking barriers down between that human contact and doing things online.
Right.
So you're right. Previously, people just want a person, right? They just want to speak to a person. There's a lot of comfort in that, and moving to a new way of doing things is intimidating. So it's not that they don't want to use a bot or some online portal. It's that they've never done it before.
I hate
and
bots.
the process
I'm
of
sorry.
doing something different is discomforting. But actually, during COVID-19, they've been forced to do it, and so they've broken that fear of doing it. So now, when COVID-19 is over, they're actually going to stay doing it the new way. It's not so relevant, but there's been I can't remember where I read it, but there's a massive increase in self-service tills in supermarkets. Normally, when you go to a supermarket, you see a few of them, and no one uses them. Right? They want to go to the person who will pack their bags and do everything. But now there's a massive surge in the contactless ways, and that's going to it was essentially just breaking down barriers that people had, mental barriers that this is the way I've always done things, so this is the way I'm always going to do it. And now they've tried something different. And when COVID-19 and the pandemic is over, they're going to carry on doing things the new way. So certain things are going to change, and certain businesses are going to suffer, and other businesses are going to go down. I think it was a McKinsey report I read that estimated that in Malaysia, digitalization and automation would cut around 4 million jobs.
4 million?
But would create between 5 and 6 million jobs.
How does that?
So certain manual jobs obviously would be lost, but the jobs around the industry of digitalization and automation would increase at a faster rate than the jobs that were lost because of automation.
So obviously, like cashiers, right? Bank tellers, for the most part, I can't remember the last time I actually went to a bank and spoke to a teller right there, right? Everything's ATM, automated teller machines, automated. So these jobs will probably go because they're automated, and people need to be retrained. Joel's job's probably going to be safe because people want to see him, and then he has a smooth voice. Probably hosts, announcers, I don't know. Possibly now they even have a new AI that could possibly replace us, right? Deepfake. So what jobs are safe? You know,
it's a good question. No, recruitment will be replaced. I think I've got another.
You are part of the problem in this case because that's what your company does.
Well, exactly. I mean, we're not at the AI stage, but we're at the digitalization stage.
That's Google, yeah.
But eventually, I mean, I think I've got at least another 20 years left. But AI will replace recruiters. It's almost inevitable. So then you're right. What do these workers who are obsolete move to? And it's a very difficult question. It's not even about economy. It's about the human condition. When we suddenly reach a stage of technological advancement where there's no need for people to work, and what happens then? You have to change your complete economic outlook, and money has a different kind of value.
It's like the whole Star Trek thing, right? Isn't it? Right? You don't need money.
Just learn tech.
See, Star Trek is a very utopian, very nice way of looking at things where everything just kind of works. There's also, I don't know whether you remember Demolition Man, where there was like one layer of things where it worked really well. Sorry, there's like old person talking here, right? Elysium. All right, let's talk about Elysium, where there's an elitist section where everything was automated, things worked, and then people didn't have to work, things worked for them. But then there's also another layer where people still had to work and they were living in the slums. Are we heading towards that area?
I hope not.
Yeah, because I'm too pretty to work in the slums, man.
Oh, I know exactly how you feel.
Right.
But it's from a different one.
Right.
But yeah, it's certainly. I mean, you can't predict what's going to happen. I think there's so many variables, and it's easy to become scared by science fiction, and take that Terminator approach that AI is going to be bad for us. There's certainly no evidence that it will be, but we also don't know what it will create. You know, we don't know what we don't know, and that's the biggest problem, and that's the problem that's facing people that will be made obsolete. The problem isn't necessarily that they're going to be made obsolete. It's that they don't know that they're going to be made obsolete. So setting up think tanks and bodies and parts of the government that identifies professions and types of people that are at threat, and work to be able to
Prepare them.
for what's coming next.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to prepare when you don't know what you
Exactly. So we don't know what we don't know. How will we know? Well, I'm even confused by my own question. How will we know what we don't know? By failure, by doing things, try again, and then,
I think that our younger generation has to be a bit more brave in terms of what we are paying attention to and how we're speaking out. We can't be scared anymore, I think, of a lot of things, to kind of, say what's going on as what it is. I don't know, in Malaysia, I think there's already a disparity in status, right? There's always been. But we've also had the middle class, which is, we grew up, it's kind of safe.
Yeah.
But now I think, I could be wrong, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's getting bigger, that gap. So before that happens really bad, I think we need to just do something, especially the younger kids.
Yeah.
We need
It's
to do
interesting. I
something.
think you probably all saw the news that in certain wet markets they're banning foreign workers, but also no Malaysians want to do the work.
Hey, the muscle guy took up the job. I follow him on Instagram, man. I'm a very hetero guy, but I would go buy vegetables from that guy, man. Serious.
There are a lot of NGIs, I think, and individuals in Malaysia that are helping people, which is great, because we don't, I don't know if we're allowed to say this, but if the government's not doing anything, we have a lot of people on ground, I think.
So what should people be applying for, the younger ones?
I think you can draw on therapy for this, right? A little bit. Obviously, I have one hammer, so I'm going to use that to hit everything, right now, therapy. So with therapy, for example, one of the main messages that we tell our clients is that, I don't want to have a situation where you come to me for every single problem that you have. It's not sustainable, right? If your car breaks down, you come see me. You break up, you come see me. You lose a job, you come see me. It doesn't make sense, right? And I tell all my clients that, I hope that through the sessions that we have, I prepare you enough that no matter what life throws at you, you're going to say, yep, sure, no problem, I'll move on in that sense. And I tell my clients as well, I hope I never have to see you again in the best possible way, right? And I think that maybe, just taking what John said and what Juanita said as well, taking it one step further. So instead of teaching them tangible, concrete skills that sometimes, right? Obviously sometimes you do need to learn those skills, but teaching them something else, like resiliency, about adaptability, about saying, nothing is too
Soft skills.
Yeah, soft skills, right? That kind of thing. Maybe if we do it that way, like the whole, teach a man to fish, give that kind of analogy, right? You teach them how to be adaptable and say, I'll do it just because I have to do it and I'm willing to learn. And if we can instill that in them, maybe that's a better approach instead of micromanaging. Production industry goes down. Okay, I'm going to do soft skills training, not soft skills, right? IT training or business training, whatever it is, right? So instead of doing that so specifically, just doing a more all-encompassing kind of be more versatile, be more robust, be more open to different kind of opportunities and things like that. Maybe that might be one approach that we can look at it. It's more meta, I suppose, but
That's apparently a better managing style as well. Outsourcing and passing that on to your workers instead of micromanaging. It's a more successful managing style, statistically.
Times are tough. People are having lots of mental issues now. I'm just thinking, and people used to laugh at people who took psychology degrees and whatever it is. What job are you gonna get? But it was a very hip and cool degree to get. I took psychology.
Yeah.
But now people actually there's a growing need for it, right? And there are people going, well, excuse the term, but absolutely mental, right? And they need help.
Yeah.
Do you see that? People do you even tell parents maybe you should get into psychology and then I can hire them?
Yes and no. Because I'm very careful about it, because I know that even up to today, psychology is still something that's quite popular amongst the younger generation, and I do in my company, so I handle all the emails and stuff. We do get a lot of inquiries about people who say, "Oh, can I intern in a place? I'm in my high school, I'm in my degree, and I want to learn about the profession and all that." And I think while it is a good job to be done, I think people sometimes don't realize the amount of work that needs to be done. Because most industries, you stop at your degree level and off you go, right? Most industries, not all. But for psychology, you need a minimum of your master's, right? So for example, in Malaysia, to be a clinical psychologist, you need a minimum master's in clinical psychology. So that means it's 3 years degree, 1 year honors, 2 years for your master's, right? So it's about 6 years of study, right? And a lot of times people stop at the degree level and say, okay, cool, I'm done, right? Where's my job, right? And I think a lot of times when I share that with people, they get a shock, right? Because they don't realize the amount of work that needs to be done. And that's only in Malaysia. If you talk about the States, for example, or Australia or UK, a minimum, to practice, you need a minimum PhD, right? A doctorate, right? And that's not including the, 10,000 plus hours of practical training that you need to qualify to be a clinical psychologist, right? So yes, I think it is a good field to be in, and you should go in, but please go into it both eyes wide open. Don't think that you can go in and after degree, okay, cool, I can do whatever I want to do, right? And oftentimes people get stuck really badly at that point, right? And it's quite a shock to the system as well. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who sell psychology as a degree as the be-all and end-all psychology, which is far, far, far from true. Even me, for example, when I was doing it, when I found out, I need my master's, I'm like, oh crap, mom, dad, I need 2 more years, and I can do more work, right, kind of thing. So by the time I was done, by the time I got my PhD, it was I studied for about 10 years or something like that, right? And that's something, if you're not truly passionate about it, you're doing it just for the dollars and cents, you think that you're going to make money after that, you're going to be sorely, sorely disappointed.
I mean, besides being an actual psychologist or clinical psychologist, do you get degrees come into you and you see they got a degree in psychology but they want to join a tech company? What jobs do they get?
From a job hunting point of view, a degree is a good way to get your foot in the door for an interview. Having a degree doesn't automatically make you better at the job.
Right.
Having a degree doesn't make you intelligent. It just shows that you've gone through a degree course. And we were talking earlier about how a recruiter selects candidates they want to interview from a big group. And of course, having a degree can be a good way to narrow down. So it is important to have a degree for job hunting. But it's also important to note that it's not essential. You can very well succeed in life without a degree. I think one thing that's consistent against all people who are successful is the passion and drive and hard work that they have. So in many ways, a degree is a shortcut to get further ahead in life without having to have that passion and drive and hard work. It lets you jump a couple of spaces. That's generalizing.
It's like playing shoots and ladders.
Yeah. It's generalizing a lot. But I think for me, what's most important is if you're in a position right now where you are choosing which degree you should do. As we said earlier, that you don't know what you don't know. You don't know which industries are going to do well in the future, which industries are going to die out. Pick something that you do have that drive and passion in. Pick something that you are excited about. Because in most cases, the only thing that's important is that you have a degree. Unless you want to be a doctor, unless you want to be a psychologist, unless you want to be something very, very specific that has a requirement, a legal requirement that you have a qualification, the degree subject doesn't actually matter. And if I look at who I've hired across Lazada, iFlix, my previous companies, I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's more common to find people who their profession doesn't match their degree subject than it is to find people whose degree subject matches their profession.
But psychology, though, how many people actually get jobs in a regular world? so sorry, man, I didn't. Thanks.
But it's actually as Joel was saying, psychology is a subject that people very often do because they're genuinely interested in people. They might not. I think a lot of people study it with no intention to actually use it. They're just genuinely interested. Unfortunately, I think they're often interested in how to use it to manipulate people and hypnotize people and things like this.
So HR and PR jobs would be great for them, though, right?
If only if that's what they love.
Right.
If they love people, Like, so I'm Jen, who is like a talent.
Did she take psychology?
Yeah, she's a psychology major.
Wow, she's a.
She does ads now, and she produces stuff.
Yeah, YouTube star turned into
Production
a major mogul, right? What did you take?
I did media, but I wish I studied psychology.
See, everybody wants to do psychology, right? I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do, right? I want to be a rock star at one point, but I ended up doing this. And I'm just wondering, we don't know when this is going to recover. We don't know if it's going to recover at all. What's the field to do it? Because maybe 20, 30 years ago it's engineering, right? What's a safe bet? And I'm trying to figure out for the B40s and the lower M40s and whatnot. The urbanites, will figure themselves out because they have the luxury in certain cases. What's a safe field to choose?
Invest in rubber gloves.
Right? Yeah. You know?
But it's not so much a joke actually, because the industries which the limited studies have shown so far to not be affected by COVID are pharma, which you could loosely say rubber gloves might fall into maybe.
Yeah.
Insurance, financial services, and telcos. So in the short term, you might say pick degrees or career path that leads towards those industries. But again, we're talking about now, and in 3, 4, 5 years when you finish your degree, you don't know, what might have happened. Which is why I tell people to focus on what they're passionate about. We don't know what we don't know. Since the degree subject is not so important as the degree, get your degree, have fun doing it, do something you're passionate about. You've got the degree, that will enable you to get a foot in the door in 90% of jobs. Engineering,
Always, right?
Is
Software engineering?
Any type of engineering. It's a really interesting subject which focuses purely on solving problems, which is useful in any industry, but not everybody can be an engineer.
Yeah. Because coding seems to be very popular right now, even amongst the kids and parents I know. They're sending the kids for coding because they want to get their kids into all this. And I remember at one point, you and I were working for the same company, and we were hiring people from all over the place, like Syria and Lord knows where, because they had that skill. That's not going to change it, right?
That's a job that could be replaced by AI.
That's true.
So at the moment, you're right. It's hugely in demand. But what's good about it is that it's also a job that involves intense problem solving, using all kinds of complicated algorithms I can't even possibly begin to understand.
Yeah.
And those skills are transferable. So that studying coding, computer engineering, even if that industry does die, actually it's not a bad degree to do, because the basic skills around it of problem solving and thinking algorithmically are skills which are going to be around for a long time.
Well, I think, John, you said something that I think I really liked, right? You basically said that, don't try and predict what's going to happen, because there's no way for us to predict it. Instead, do something that it's more consistent, more manageable, like something that you enjoy doing, and then after that, let's see what happens, right? Because if you're going to keep predicting, what's going to happen? Like, you never know what's going to make it big in 5 years or 10 years.
It's a moving target all the time. Right?
Exactly, right? You just throw the dice and see what hits, right? Which is crazy. Instead, you go back into yourself, figure out what you want to do for yourself, and then let that lead the way. I think that's more sustainable, I would think. That's me, right?
Interesting, it probably leads to less clients for you, because less people end up in the profession that they don't want, that their parents push them towards accounting or something, and they end up being
Secretly, you think all this was formulated by all the psychologists in the world. How do we get more clients over to us? We need them to be very stressed out.
are more happy about their lives.
Right? Yeah. Forget these happy people, man. Screw them. Okay, let's make them all upset. But you know what? I always like to think there's, what's that? With every dark cloud, what's that? There's a silver lining, right? And I look at some of these companies and hotels. In many cases, I think there was such a boom in tourism at some point that hotels were just mushrooming everywhere. Every damn shop house was some hotel, and some were run really, really badly, and some were great, right? Some branches were great of a big chain, some weren't. I just think COVID-19, horrible as it is, it's killed hundreds of thousands of people, right? It has kind of weeded out the bad seeds. In business and whatnot, because you and I know some companies were run pretty badly from the inside, and people were working there just because they needed a paycheck, because they fit that particular role, right? That's from me. Is there an upside to all this?
So I think if you're talking about, so a lot of companies have gone out of business because of COVID-19. It's not necessarily the bad businesses or the businesses with poor business models.
Yeah.
The companies that surviving are the companies that are cash rich or that can continue doing business during this time. There's many fantastic businesses who have been hit at just at the wrong time in their development, and we've lost those fantastic companies. I think COVID-19 is really highlighting poor leadership.
Yeah.
Not so much in a practical sense, but on social media, with so many people being let go. What was the number? How many million in the last
2.4 million in the past 4 months? Yeah.
It's a huge number, and some of them have come out of this with really positive stories that, hey, I was let go, but this is what my company did for me. This is what the people in the company did for me. Others have just cited terrible communication, terrible management, and it's really highlighted poor leaders. No leader could avoid the impact of COVID-19, but they all had a choice of how they deal with it and how they communicate with their employees that they have to lose.
But there's no right way to retrench people.
There's no right way, but there's definitely wrong ways.
Yeah.
There's definitely wrong ways to do it without empathy, to do it without the correct kind of transparency and communication, and leave people thinking that you left them hanging, versus letting them go in a very supportive way, knowing you're there, letting them know you're there to help them find a new job, letting them know you're there to be a shoulder to cry on, letting them go with empathy. So I think there has been a lot of cases where leaders who were not qualified to lead, but had never been tested, have been exposed. So there's many people in leadership positions who got promoted because they were good at their role. Their role didn't involve leadership, but because they were good at hitting KPIs, hitting targets, they got promoted. They never actually acquired the leadership skills. Not necessarily their fault. Their company often promotes people too quickly and doesn't give them the development that they need. But either way, there's lots of leaders who actually are not equipped, educated, or even inclined to actually do a leadership role.
Right.
And I think those people, a lot of people like that, have been exposed.
Have you gone through mass retrenchment? I mean, you've been in HR for a long time. Have you ever gone through something like?
Yes.
Was there any right and wrong ways to do it?
So we were talking earlier about different types of recruiters, and on the one hand, you have people who just do it as a job, and they care about their KPIs. They don't care about the people behind the KPIs. And on the other hand, you got people who barely care about the KPIs, and they do it because they have a love for people and seeing people improve and develop and grow. So it's the same with leaders, right? And it's the same with when you have to go through these difficult retrenchment situations. If all you care about is KPIs, you don't care about the people, it's actually very easy for you, because you just
it's a number, right?
You just sign.
Yeah. Thanks for helping. And made us a lot of money, but
and you just push them out the
door.
And it's from the business point of view, it might be the right thing to do, because it takes zero resources to do it. But from a people point of view, it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And on the vice versa, you've got super passionate, caring people who then give the people they're retrenching too much help, and they take too much of the company's resources, and that can be a contributing factor to the company then having to make more retrenchments. So finding that balance of, it's the eternal struggle of the HR person, finding balance between what's good for the employees and the people and what's good for the company, and trying to find something that is good for both. And you can't always do that. So it's a very difficult situation where you have to make retrenchments. There's no right way to do it, but there's definitely wrong ways to do it, assuming you do care for people and you're not a son of a bitch.
Couldn't they just look, this role doesn't work out? Because I don't understand. I know for the most part, they'll say, and I love getting those memos from the companies where it says, hey, we have to let go of people. It's not because it affects the bottom line. It's not about profitability. We know it's about profitability because salaries account for quite a lot, right? But they always say it's not about that. But if it really wasn't about COVID and everything, couldn't they be retrained, and couldn't they get them to do other jobs? You know? Yeah. Wouldn't that be the right way to do it?
There's always an avenue to do that, but whether or not it adds value to the company if there's a way to show that doing that will add some kind of value to the company, even if it's not a lot, but if there's some value, it's worth doing. But often, it's simply not viable. I mean, even the most caring person in the world can sometimes say, yeah, it's sad that this person has to go, but there's literally nothing
Right.
for them to do.
Yeah.
If we kept him on board, it would literally be a charity case.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes you do have to
Yeah.
make tough decisions, and especially in the COVID case, it's just an equation, right? This is how much cash reserves we've got, this is how much we expect to be able to make during this period, and this is how much our staff costs are. The equation doesn't balance, so you have to lose people. It's not even about profitability. It's about, this is my ingoings and this is my outgoings,
Right.
and they don't match. And I think most people are kind of happy with that as a reason, as long as it's transparent like that, as long as they know what's going to happen. I think it's when uncertainty comes in, when you're working for a company and they're saying everything's going to be okay, but you kind of know what the financials are as well, and you're being told everything's okay, but secretly you're expecting to get an email any day that you might be made redundant. I think that uncertainty is what causes a lot of the fear and the discomfort, rather than your boss having a meeting and saying, hey,
This is what's happening.
this is what happened, this is how much we've got, this is how much staff costs are, we might have to make some of you redundant, we're going to do everything we can not to, but there's a high chance. That kind of transparency is much more effective than trying to hide things and sugarcoat things and have that false positivity.
But they always get the HR guys to do all the dirty work though. Because I know for a fact that some of these guys are like, hey, times are really tough. We really can't keep you. I'm so sorry. And it's because, COVID and economic forces and everything. And we really cannot afford it. I'm down to my last dollar. Thank you. Here's your severance pay. You get 2 months, whatever it is. And then you go off. And then the dude gets into his Bentley. Where if he had sold a Bentley, you could have paid off a chunk of other people, no?
Yeah, so it's definitely a sad fact that shareholders come before employees.
Yeah.
In most companies, that's where the money comes from. It's not morally right, but it's a fact of life. Right?
Yeah. By the way, if Bentley wants to give me a car, it's fine. Retrenchments, mass retrenchments. I think like in some companies, there's a big media company. I think the Star is letting go of people as well right now. Then BBDO recently, Blue Ink recently. There's a lot of people in different industries all losing their jobs. They're all retrenched. They weren't fired because they were horrible workers. Psychologically, they're different, right?
Yep.
I guess the ones who were retrenched suffer from some kind of depression and whatever. Right? What's the difference? I mean, like psychologically.
I think that's a really good question, right? So we've been involved in some retrenchment exercises. So companies bring us in, and then we send a team over there to be stationed at the site, so that when the news is being released to them, if and when they need some support, then we're there to help out, right? And the common theme that you hear it's usually for people who've been retrenched, right? It's usually about the idea of I didn't know this was happening. It was unexpected. I was so shocked to hear about it. And I've got nothing to prepare for. Prepare for when I finally leave the company, in that sense, right? So I think that's the major difference between someone who's been fired and someone who's been retrenched, right? It's the uncertainty or the suddenness of it all, in that sense, right? Obviously, in cases where the company is doing badly and it's like the rumor mill has been saying there's going to be retrenchment, then yeah, fine. But if it's a sudden kind of thing, that's a big shock to the system, right? Versus someone who's gotten fired, and obviously again there are differences, right? So if someone is completely ignorant and dense and doesn't realize they're doing such a piss poor job that they're gonna get fired, then yeah, of course, then it's gonna be a shock to them. But sometimes people do realize when it's a bad fit and they don't fit into the culture, or they're just not a good right jive for the company, and they know they're gonna get fired or they're gonna let go, for example. And then I think that it's I'm not saying it's gonna be better, but at least it's expected in some cases, right? But again, what I'm saying here is I can't generalize it across the board, right? There are obviously some nuances here and there that you need to account for. But I think for people who have been retrenched, a lot of times people would say, hey, you know what, chin up, go and find another job, go on LinkedIn, go and start looking again. And honestly, our advice to them usually at times like this is just to give yourself time to really appreciate what's going on, right? And by appreciate, I mean if you need to cry, if you need to scream, if you need to punch a wall, go ahead and do it, because you need to get it out of your system. The last thing you want to do is it's like a rebound, right? You break up with someone after like 3 years and then you rebound, you go for the next person that you see. It's going to end badly.
I've never had to go through that. Sure. One woman man.
But it's the same thing with the job as well. You get retrenched and you don't allow yourself the time to process the grief and the loss and all the bad things that are associated with retrenchment. And you jump straight into another job recruitment or a job after that.
Right. So there's no acceptance of
processing, and all that kind of stuff, right? And you're going to carry all that baggage from the previous job into the new job.
About that, let's say you worked at a place for, doesn't have to be like back in the day, people worked in a company for 30 years or for their whole life and then they retire, right? In this case, let's say you worked for a company for 10 years. And after that, you get retrenched. After putting in all this work, you've been really, really good to them, right? You've gotten promoted and whatever. And then you get retrenched. Don't you feel like you got screwed over? And then do you take that into the next company where you're not going to be as loyal? Psychologically, I'm not going to give my 100% to this company because they're going to screw me over anyway. Doesn't that mess up the job market out there?
Yeah, I think it definitely would. I think from an individual perspective, if you carry that baggage into your next job, it's like I'm always waiting for that arrow to hit me in the back, right? I'm not doing the job that I was hired to do. I'm just making sure that I don't get fired. It's two very different things here, right? And I think that happens exactly like we said, when you don't process, you don't allow yourself time to grieve and actually experience and change the way you see things. Like what you said just now, if I get retrenched, that means I've been wronged by the company, right? But in actual fact, like what John said, sometimes I just can't help it. The company 1 + 1 does not make 3, and I can't hire so many people, right? It's just a matter of bad luck, and sometimes bad luck does happen in that sense, right? And if people can't wrap their heads around that concept and they say everything is a personal affront to them, right? They're going to go into the next job and it's going to say, come at me, bro, that kind of thing. And it's going to be bad for them, right? And it's going to tank their prospects and things like that,
Earlier you talked about gratitude, practicing gratitude with little things like touch and go, got balance here, and that's gratitude in processing, what was it we were talking about? Rejection, was it? Or failure? So how do we, I guess, everyday practice, how do we do that in processing our actions, I guess, kind of reflecting what's happened in the last job?
So
how do we introspect?
Like I think that's important, right? But I think it's also we gotta be realistic about it, right? Expecting someone to do that immediately after they retrench is a bad idea. It's like you'll find another person or you find another job. Don't worry about it. I know the intentions are good, right? But what's that saying? The road to hell is paved in good intentions, right? But what's going to do is going to put so much pressure on this person. I have to get a job. I need to find a job. If not, I'll be that failed person who got retrenched. That's the title that I have on my forehead, and that's what I run with, right? So again, like I said, it gives yourself time to grieve and process what happened, and then after that, really appreciate. Look, yes, I got fired after 10 years, but I have 10 years of experience, right? And would I have gotten this in any other company? Probably not. And if you did a kick-ass job at that place, the people that you work with, those relationships don't evaporate straight away, right? Half the time I would assume, John probably be a better person to tell, if you made a good impression in one company and let's say this HR manager goes to another company, wouldn't you be at the top of their heads, for example, in that sense? So that's also worth taking back, right? Yes, you lose your income, but you have the relationships, the experience, the repertoire, I suppose, from doing a good job that you're doing, right? So there are a lot of things that you can take away. But again, being realistic about it, not immediately, not like 2 days after, but however long that you need to process it.
I gave myself, I think, 1 year in my mid-20s to kind of just take a break because I'd been working since I was in college before I graduated.
Non-stop, right?
So and I had gone through a few bad relationships. So I needed to heal, and I gave myself 1 year to kind of
talk about that?
Just heal.
The relationships? Not now?
No, I mean, not now. I'm happy to talk about it.
No, we're not talking about that right now.
But not now.
Right.
But I think, I feel like I took too much time to,
really?
to feel everything because I'm like, but it felt necessary. Now looking back, I felt like I needed it and it was really good for my mental health.
But in that 1 year, what did you learn about your failures? Like, oh man, I shouldn't have done this, I should have done that, like professionally, personally?
I think personality-wise, my immediate reaction is to blame myself for everything. So there was a lot of guilt and self-blame and anger and also bitterness and blaming other people. So it's like the 7 stages, I think,
Yeah.
of grief. So I just had to grieve my loss and just start from scratch. But I chose to see it as, hey, I'm starting a new life and I'm building this whole new thing for myself, which is really exciting. And
Are you
good.
worried that people, because it's a very unforgiving industry, the
Yeah.
broadcast and media industry, and you did the beauty queen thing as well, and
did.
it's very unforgiving, and then you take some time off and you come back, and then especially for ladies, then you, once you get older, then you might want to get married and have kids and everything. Like, we're very disposable, right? The next young thing comes in and could replace you.
Right.
How do you, like, you're kind of reinventing yourself.
Yeah, because I hate that mentality of like even pageants. I don't agree with it. So going back, I actually went back last year to see a pageant, and that was like, I don't know, 7 years after I was in one, and seeing it from a very different perspective was it was interesting. It's kind of nice, but also felt very sad.
Do you feel stronger now, though?
I feel stronger. I feel like that's why we need to create opportunities for women, especially, that's why I think, for women to be able to meet these people and grow your network without having to put on a bikini and have your stats
Yeah.
called out on stage. I don't think it's necessary to to have that platform. So that's why I think
Like in the media circle, it's incredibly small. Everybody knows everybody,
Yeah.
right? And it can be this country, next country. Like I've been in Singapore forever, but people in Singapore know everybody, knows everybody here. Like people in the media industry, like writers, there's so many different kinds of jobs in there. How do you think they can reinvent themselves if that's all they know? This is all they do, you know? What can they do? I mean, you moved from TV, like we both did TV, then now you're into podcasting, which is exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
What else is there for them?
give back to people, I guess. That's what I
jobs
think.
wise, I mean,
Yeah, you create your own opportunities, I feel. I think there's always going to be a job. I think if you believe it, Archana, if you believe it and you will it and you work for it, something will come.
did you ever think of going into the corporate world at some point?
Yeah.
Because I did that. You know, yes, right. You freaking hired me, right? So yeah.
But I don't feel like that's my calling. I don't know, maybe, but I don't know. What corporate world depends on what. I would still
'cause
have to be in
we're
media
well
because I
made for
studied.
PR work in some cases, right? Not everybody in media. I mean, like some people are probably they're good at copywriting and something. Maybe they can find another job somewhere else. But I mean, we know a lot of people in media who have lost jobs and everything. Where should, in your opinion, because you've had time to digest this, you've had time to be angry with yourself and learn and be stronger, and they should learn from you because it's very harsh. But what can they do, you think? People in media who've lost their jobs and there are no magazines to go to anymore.
I think there are a lot of groups that you can be a part of. Like if for freelancers, there's Fiverr, I don't know, there's like Glassdoor, that
Oh, we love Glassdoor.
Yeah.
Hear what the worst stuff from every company. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
there are tons of, I think, groups that you can be a part of. And like Talent PR, I think is great because they send out like a newsletter to all the professionals in the media industry. And then they have job opportunities and about, different people who have just acquired new jobs. So I think when you get these newsletters, just send out whatever if you want, based on what you want to, what you're looking for.
Yeah. What do you think of those? Like, I don't know whether you guys check out all these websites like Sizz and like World of Buzz seems to be everywhere right nowadays. Like, what do you think of places like that? From, let's just say you were a host and then suddenly you move into something like that. Is that that's tech kind, right? Technically.
I don't know. I think it really depends what each person is looking for. I think it's good to get a job. Like, I'm gonna try this thing out for another 1 year.
But that's
maybe,
an in-between, that's a
and
rebound,
if it doesn't
right?
work out, then I will go to corporate because that's the last thing I want to do is try to, build somebody else's
Right.
dream. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to build my dream and I want to help people.
But I think the important thing is not to pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah.
So not you set these psychological boundaries that I am a writer,
Yes.
so therefore I do writing jobs.
Pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah.
But at some point they weren't a writer and they became a writer. So if they can become a writer, they can become something else.
Yeah.
So pigeonholing yourself and setting your own limitations is just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
And setting your limits further and wider, I think, is the most important thing. That belief that you can change.
Yeah, that's true. That was kind of hard to come out of, I think, as a presenter, because I had totally forgot that I started out producing first, and then I did the music executive, where I was in management, and then I did digital executive, which was the online and website, social media and website, and I completely forgot that I was all of these things before I was a presenter in front of the camera, just like a talent, you know, and I regretted not learning what happens behind the camera when I was a talent. So yeah, I think I agree with you. Definitely
I asked only
don't
because
pigeonhole.
it's very, pigeonholing is exactly true, and I asked because you're still at that age where you can still reinvent yourself. I'm at the tail end of whatever it is I'm doing, right?
I think you need to like be open to it at every age.
It's just not like a 90s.
And that's already pigeonholing yourself and putting limitations because you're comfortable and you like to do it, right?
Like, I'll never be an MMA fighter, you know what I mean? I'll never get into a cage, and that's my dream, you know? I want to take on, I'll be the next Agilan Tani, but you know what I mean? But I guess...
They have over 40 categories.
Or create your own category.
Right.
Your own.
So I suppose reinvent yourself. Don't be afraid to try to get into things, new things. Be prepared to be angry with yourself, I suppose.
Allow yourself.
Allow yourself to break down.
Yeah.
And things, we're hoping it will improve. The stats say that they're hoping that within the next 6 months, it won't get better until it gets worse, right? So with that in mind, and we can talk to the cows come home about this, right? Unemployment, what to do, whatnot, and we will revisit this. But from each of you, what can we look forward to? Any advice to those who have lost their jobs, trying to get back into the job market? We'll start with John.
Okay, yeah. So for me, LinkedIn is the number one tool to use to get a new job. Having an amazing LinkedIn profile that is keyword optimized, that really highlights what you do, and using LinkedIn as a networking tool. So you are creating opportunities for yourself. You are making yourself visible to employers. You are making yourself visible to potential other types of opportunities. Treating your job hunt as your business. You were talking about being entrepreneurs.
That's all you are right now.
But being a job hunter, that is your entrepreneurial pursuit, and looking at it like that. Setting yourself up rewards, setting yourself up KPIs, setting yourself up targets to hit, and approaching it as if it is your job and if it is your entrepreneurial pursuit. I think that's the most important thing they can do now. The CV, to be honest, if you do a good LinkedIn profile, you can download your profile in a CV format. So that's your CV done. You do your LinkedIn profile and you've got an automatic CV done already. So doing that, but I guess even before you do that, really sitting down and thinking about what you want in a job, what you want out of life. That might be a luxury for some people who need income coming straight away. But for those who are lucky enough to have a few months, really focus your job search on not what your degree says, not what your education says, not what your parents want you to do, but legitimately on what you're passionate about, and just levitate towards that.
Nita?
Yeah. I think make your profile creative. I think of creative ways to present yourself. I think earlier John mentioned as well, really studying the company inside and out. I think that really helps. But just putting yourself out there, really. Yeah. I had a few pointers. I just completely lost myself. But
it's weird. I think a lot of job hunters are scared to put themselves out there. They don't even want people to know that they're looking for a job. They view it as confidential. How can you do that? You have to bite the bullet and realize that the more coverage you get, the more experience you get, or the more network you have, the better you're going to do.
Yeah.
Just like a business. I mean, the reason I'm doing a podcast, one, because you're a friend and it's a favor, but two, it's great publicity for my company, right?
Yeah.
I want to put myself out there so my company gets publicity.
Yeah.
It's the same when you're a job hunter. You want publicity. you should create your own little mini podcasts. Anyone with a telephone can do a podcast, right? Webinars, etc. You should be as visible as you possibly can.
Joel,
I think
don't go nuts. No. What's the advice?
That's always good advice, right? I think it sucks, right? I think with COVID-19, a lot of bad things have happened in terms of people losing jobs, especially since I'm on this topic on this pod, right? I think, yes, like what John said, if you have the luxury to really take the time to just sit in and rediscover yourself, right? For a lot of us, right, especially those of us who've been working since we graduated, it's been like a giant rat race, right? We're just chasing. We've never had the time to just sit down and say, is this really what I want to do for the next 10 years? Like what John did, right? From makeup salesman to like HR head honcho.
We got to talk more about that one of these days.
Brilliant. That's so cool. But if you never took the time and say, is this really what I want to keep doing? You're never going to answer that question because it's never been asked, right? So even like you said, like, in every dark cloud is a silver lining. Maybe you being retrenched, maybe you being let go gives you that opportunity to say, hang on, is this what I want to keep doing? What do I want to do in my life? So using that opportunity, even though it's ill-timed and it's unfortunate, but using that to see where it can drive you forward in that sense. Obviously with the luxury of resources and all that. If you don't, then yes, do what you need to do to survive. But that doesn't stop you from doing that as well, right? I think sometimes, even with my clients as well, sometimes clients need to hit a giant brick wall hard, right, before they realize, okay, shit's hit the fan, I need to do something about it, right? I need to change, move forward, evolve and whatever. So maybe for you right now, this could be that brick wall, and then for you to just re-examine and see what you want to do, be an entrepreneur, to find a 9-to-5 job because it's more stable, for example, feed a family, whatever, right? So I think that would probably be my advice now. Take your time, process as much as you can if you have the luxury to, and really ask yourself the question, who am I and what do I want to do?
Any words of encouragement to the younger crowd, the 20?
Just do it, man. Don't be scared. I think if it's anything, try to identify, like when it's fear, then that's why you're procrastinating. I think that's something that like I had to deal with. Yeah. I just wasn't doing anything because I was just so scared. And I was waiting for everything to be perfect. I still do that a lot of times. Yeah. But I have my, family to call me out now, which is great. But yeah, don't be scared. Just do it. And there's always a way. There's always a way to do something. There are always people to help. You just need to reach out, and in its right time, it will come. It will happen. Yeah. So.
Guys, thank you so much. And for you, we're hoping things will get better eventually. Hopefully, you guys will get a job eventually. If not, get in touch with John. He'll sort you out. But the word is that things will hopefully improve. But I tell you what, if you have any issues that you want us to talk about, to discuss that affects you directly, the details are below. You can get in touch with us at this email address, and we will talk about it. We'll get the best people to discuss it and hopefully sort you out. But Dr. Joel, thank you so much. John, thank you so much for being here. Juanita, it's always a pleasure to have you here, and this has been great. I learned so much, and we hope you learned it as well. Thanks, guys.